How to make your boutique search firm AI enabled in 30 days. Most boutique firms don't have an AI problem. They have a capacity problem. Your best people are spending way too much time writing notes, updating your ATS, preparing candidate presentations, chasing context, and trying to remember what happened in conversations 3 weeks ago. The usual advice is just use AI, which, as we all know, is not helpful. You do not want to replace your ATS. You do not want recruiters sending robotic messages. And you definitely don't want confidential client and candidate information ending up in tools that nobody's approved. So in this video, I'm going to show you a practical 30-day plan to make sure your search firm is AI enabled without breaking parts of your business that actually make you valuable. Judgment, relationships, discretion, and specialist knowledge. First, let's go through a reframe. The goal is not to add AI. The goal is to remove one measurable constraint that is stopping your firm from doing better work. For most boutique search firms, that constraint is not a lack of effort. It's the gap between the conversations your team has and the intelligence your firm actually retains and uses. A recruiter has excellent candidate conversations. They learn why somebody might move, what they really are good at, what would put them off, and who else they know in the market. Then the call ends. Some of that information gets typed into your ATS, some goes into a random notebook beside their desk, and some sits in maybe a Slack or Teams message. And too much of it just stays inside of our recruiters' heads. This is not just an admin issue. It's a firm value issue. If that producer leaves, if a researcher hands off a search, or if a candidate reappears 6 months later, does that firm actually have any context or the context from those conversations? That's where AI should start. Not replacing recruiter judgment, capturing, structuring, and making relationship intelligence actually useful. So here's the 5-step 30-day search firm AI model that I highly recommend you check out. So step number 1, choose a workflow. Step number 2, set those rules. 3 is capture and structure. 4, review quality. And 5 is measure the business results. And let's break this down so it's deliberately simple, easy to automate, and helps you get going. So first thing I'd recommend is do not attempt to automate your entire firm in 1 month. Start with one high-frequency, low-risk workflow that creates a visible bottleneck for your team today. For most executive or boutique search firms, this happens immediately after a recruiter conversation. Let's break this down. Week 1, choose one workflow. Not 5, not 10. Let's pick one. These examples can include things like candidate interview notes not making it back into your ATS, so that's not searchable context you'd actually build intellectual property on top of. Maybe it's slow candidate presentations being sent out, which has a drastic impact to things like your time to submit and down the road there, your time to fill once that client actually approves it. Maybe it's things like your client intake calls with inconsistent brief quality, poor handoffs between researchers, recruiters, and partners, reference checks that are documented inconsistently, or maybe even things like recruiters are spending too much time doing follow-up admin after calls. Whatever it is for your firm specifically, just pick one and then define one metric. Not, we want to save time, but be very specific. So, for example, maybe it's the specific amount of time from the candidate conversation to a completed ATS record, understanding that standard of what good looks like. Maybe it's the time from that qualified brief to the first client-ready presentation your team's sending out. To maybe the percentage of live searches with documented next action steps to make sure we're actually progressing these percentage of candidate conversations with usable motivation, compensation, and available context, to maybe even something like your client feedback latency after that presentation was sent over. Whichever one that you want to choose, again, these are just examples. Pick one constraint, define one metric, and then assign one owner. Make sure there's that accountability there too. A firm that tries to measure everything usually changes nothing, right? Pick the one constraint that if moved or if removed gives your people more capacity for clients and candidate work. That's the goal at the end of the day. Before you roll out any AI tools though, agree to the rules. This is the part that too many firms skip, right? We need to sit here and decide, or maybe when you're taking this offline here, which conversations have actually been captured? When is the candidate or client consent actually needed? What information should never enter into an unapproved tool? Who reviews the AI generated outputs before they actually go to our external teams, clients, candidates, whatever that might be? Which fields must be updated inside of our ATS? And what happens when the AI output is incomplete or wrong? Because we do know hallucinations are a thing. AI should draft, structure, and prompt. Your people should remain accountable for judgment, representation, and the final quality of anything a candidate or client will actually see. This matters because adoption is not just a technology problem, it's a trust problem. For example, Bullhorn's 2026 industry report found that data quality, security, and lack of implementation plans remain meaningful obstacles to AI adoption in recruitment firms. The firms getting value are not just experimenting. They're embedding AI into clear workflows and then measuring those outcomes, because at the end of the day, this helps your business be more efficient. So here are some AI rules that we should make sure we're following. Capture the work, keep human judgment, and review before external use, right? That 10-80-10 principle you probably heard us rant so much about, that initial 10% telling it the outcome you're trying to get and what you want it to do. Let AI do that heavy lifting in the middle, actually doing that hard work. And that last 10% review is where the magic happens as we're using automation tools. So again, that's week 1. Let's get a clear understanding of what we want to change, how we're going to measure it, who's going to own it, and what that looks like. Let's have this defined, write it down so we can actually track this. In week 2 though, let's start capturing conversations, not just the conclusion. Week 2 is all about focus on capture. In a good executive search conversation, this contains far more, as we know, than just a cover letter summary, right? It contains career motivations, the candidate's real appetite for risk, their relationship with a hiring manager, their concerns maybe about the role that they're looking to fill, or evidence behind their achievements, the details that make that submission actually credible. Your AI workflow should help your recruiters do 3 things. First, it should preserve a useful record of the conversation. Second, turn that record into structured fields and clear next actions. And third, it should create a draft that makes the recruiter faster, not less thoughtful. So we can take that candidate call, turn it into structured notes, turn that into data that lives inside of your source of truth, draft any of those presentations that you need to send over no matter what call you're looking to do, and then that recruiter should just review that documentation before it's sent out. Again, these are the best practices that we should be abiding by. This is where your ATS stays central, right? Your ATS remains the system of record. AI simply reduces the friction of the work being done, and that information can actually get captured properly. Do not create a second disconnected place where your best intelligence is going to go to die, right? We're already having that living inside of our team's head. So that's week 2, right? Let's get this structured, let's get this captured, and let's make sure we can actually use some of this data going forward. Week 3 is all about quality control. One fear I hear from agency owners is if we standardize this, everyone will sound the same. Honestly, it's a fair concern. But the answer is not to let every recruiter document things differently. The answer is to standardize the information you need while preserving the recruiter's judgment, voice, and outputs. And there's easy ways that you can do this with AI. For a candidate conversation, your template might require things like their career situation and motivation, evidence against their success profile, compensation and timing, risks or rejections, relevant client conversations, agreed next steps, or maybe even that recruiter's assessment. For a client intake, It might require why this role exists now, what success looks like in 3, 6, 9, 12 months, non-negotiables versus preferences, stakeholders, decisions, processes, compensation, those market constraints, a candidate story, or maybe even just to an agreed service level. Standardize the evidence, not standardize a human. We just need to make sure we're really differentiating those two things. Once we have this basic type of information captured, we can then run a 20-minute weekly qualitative review. So we can then pick 5 records at random and just ask, is this context useful to someone else in the firm? Is the next action clear? Would this help us make a better approach to that presentation or the client update? Is this information even living in the right place so we can use it in the future if need be? And did we preserve the nuance that matters? That's how you turn AI from a novelty to an operating standard. In week 4, we want to measure the outcomes. Do not just report the logins. That doesn't help you at all. Do not celebrate the number of transcripts it created. Ask whether the workflow improved the constraints you chose in week 1. If your issue was things like slow submissions to the hiring team, did the time to first client-ready submittal actually improve? If your issue is poor ATS hygiene, did the percentage of completed live records actually improve? Or if your issue is something like recruiters' capacity, did your team actually take the time back for candidate conversations, client development, research, or closing? And one important warning, do not confuse speed with quality. A faster, weaker presentation sent to the hiring team is not a win. Right? We can all be very clear on that. A fully automated candidate message that damages trust is not a win. The goal is more capacity for high quality relationship work. So with this, 3 key mistakes to avoid. Number 1, trying to automate every workflow at once. Right? We want to start with one constraint, earn that trust, see the results, and then we want to expand. Don't just blast everything with AI. Pick a constraint in your business and see how you can actually move the needle. Number 2, treating AI output as the final output. AI can capture structure and draft. Your team, your consultants, still need to apply judgment, protect confidentiality, and make sure the work actually reflects the client and candidate property. That last 10% is where the magic happens using AI. And number 3, measuring activity instead of the outcomes. More recorded calls, more prompts, and more tool usage doesn't automatically make a better desk, right? Measure the outcomes, the outputs that you are looking to actually move the needle on. So things like time to submit, data quality, client responsiveness, the handoff quality of the conversations we're having, and measure capacity. The best boutique search firms do not use AI to become more generic. They use it to be more prepared, more responsive, and more consistent, while giving their team time for the conversations that actually win mandates and close searches. Start with one workflow this week. Choose a constraint, define the rules, capture the right context, review the quality, and measure those results. And after 30 days, you'll know whether AI is actually making your firm stronger or just creating more noise. If you want the exact scorecard behind this process, we've put together a 30-day search firm AI implementation scorecard. It'll help you identify your best first workflow that your firm should track and measure. Get your 30-day implementation scorecard here below.